What's up, y'all? Welcome to the channel. In this episode, we're gonna go over this Kuberg Freerider. Let's go. In this episode, y'all, we're gonna go over the specs on this bike, the suspension, the motor, the wheels, everything you wanna know about. We're gonna get this thing on the street and we're gonna do a Draggy run on it. I know it's not made for Draggy and it's not made for time trials, but I'm just curious to see how fast it actually is in a 0 to 330 foot and a 0 to 660 foot time, because this bike is fast. Don't let it fool you. 48 volts, people might scoff at that, but this bike is super fast. Starting from the front on what this bike has, y'all. So the Kuberg Freerider comes in a couple different variations. One is the tire size. This here is a 20 by 2.5 inch tire. Now, don't be confused by that. They use mountain bike standards to measure the tire, but the rim is actually 16 inches from side to side. So it's kind of confusing when you're trying to buy tires for these things. Are they using mountain bike specifics or are they using dirt bike size specifics? Another thing here too on the front end, guys, it's got a great front fork. This is a Moto Dorado fork. It's a pretty high-end fork for a bike like this, and that might be why the price tag warrants a little bit more, or quite a bit more, than what maybe your Surron or Telaria is. So this bike is 48 volts. Now, don't let that fool you. Just because it's 48 volts doesn't mean it's not fast. This bike is incredibly fast, and it's geared very well for this off-road type of terrain. It's got an 80-tooth rear sprocket, and it has a 10-tooth sprocket on the motor. One other thing about this bike is it's very simple. Now, you can take that for what it's worth. It's simple, the frame is simple, there's no gearbox in the motor, it's a direct drive to the rear. It doesn't even have a speedometer, a voltmeter, or a digital display to tell you anything that you've done on the bike as far as your range, your battery power, your speed, any of that. I feel like that could have been done for a price point like this on a bike this size for us adults. We need to know how much range we have. I like to know how fast I'm going. And why not put a voltmeter on there? I don't know, maybe it's just me. And if you're wondering, oh, I've never heard of a Kuberg. Well, there are not very many Kubergs here in the United States that I've seen. They're not that popular. People tend to go with the Surrons and the Telarias here. This is kind of in the same class. I would say it's in the same class as the Surron and a Telaria. Now this bike has 3 different power modes. They're accessed by a button on the side. The only thing you get here on this bike instead of the voltmeter is a light in the front right here, and it just goes from green, orange to red as your battery depletes. It's kind of a rudimentary way of knowing how much battery you have. I kind of wish for a bike this price they would have put a voltmeter on here at the least. It wouldn't have cost that much more, and they're very convenient. So a few things, guys, that on this bike that come to mind that I don't like. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a very fun, fast, capable bike. If you don't respect it, it will toss you. The few things that I don't like is I wish it had a taller front wheel. The handlebars are narrow. I'm 5'10" and they're narrow for me. That might be fine and good if you're going through single track and you need the clearance to make it through some tight trees and some tight trails. For me, I find that a wider bar adds a little bit more stability as I'm trying to navigate these objects and obstacles. The narrow bars make it feel very, very uneasy and unsteady for me at the front. The other thing is too, I can't stand the seat. I feel like I'm sitting on top of a 2x4 at Home Depot. I mean, if I can't ride the bike for more than 5 minutes because my back hurts, then what's the point? The other thing I don't like about this bike, and maybe I'm just being a little bee, is I wish it had a kickstand. Why not have a kickstand? I understand you Moto guys don't have kickstands, but I don't want to have to carry around this dinner bell looking kickstand everywhere I go or find a tree or a building to prop it up against. Half the time I just have to lay it on the ground. Anyway, kickstand. Next one. Overall, guys, I didn't want this part of the review to be super long and in-depth. All the things I'm talking about on this bike can be found online. If you're interested in knowing more of the specifics on this bike, go ahead and Google it. That's all over the internet. But anyway, what do you say we put the helmet on, we put the GoPro on, and we get some footage. Let's go. Oh, well, I went coming down that hill right there. It doesn't look that big from the video, but I'll tell you, it's pretty steep, and when you're standing next to it, kind of screwed my elbow up a little bit. Bike's down a little bit. I don't think anything's wrong with the bike. My knee's a little hurt. Pride's a little hurt. But whatever. Let's get back on the ride. Let's get back on the trails. Let's keep reviewing this machine. So the first thing you notice when you get on this bike is not the speed. It's not the torque. It's the seat. This seat is right up your ass. This seat is about as wide as the skinny side of a 2x4, and it makes you feel it. But once you get past the skinny seat, then you notice the power. People will probably see this bike, and I bet you they'll balk at the fact that it's only 48 volts. But I would be willing to bet that it's probably faster and more powerful than your 60 volt Surrons and your Telarias. So on the street is not where this bike belongs. This is kind of where this bike belongs. I kind of wish that it had a taller wheel set. I know that this particular bike comes with a taller wheel. This has got the smaller option of the wheels. For this kind of off-road stuff, I like a taller front wheel or a staggered wheel set. Other thing too is these bars are really narrow. So my hands feel like they're really close together, making almost every movement that I make on the handlebars feel very responsive. Almost to the fact where it's too responsive. I can go for a little bit wider bar and a taller front tire if we're putting the wish list together for this bike. I got no qualms with the power though, I'll say that. The suspension on this bike is really good. It's a D&M rear shock, which is kind of, it's kind of an okay shock. It's not a great shock. The front forks, that's kind of where the suspension comes in on this bike. Great front fork. Blast through here real quick before you get in trouble. Come on, baby. Too much. The bike is very powerful, but there's one downside to that, which is the battery size. So the battery is not that big. The battery has a fairly small amount of storage for the amount of power that this bike can deliver, and ultimately what that's going to do is give you a really powerful bike for maybe not as long as another brand that has a bigger amp hour battery. One thing about this bike though is the battery is not removable, so this battery is bolted in, so there's no shimmying the battery. It is where it is, it stays in there, it's bolted in. That's not to say that it's not removable, because it is removable, but it just needs to be, it's a little bit more of a lengthy process than say getting the battery out of your Surron or your Aries RFM. You can take that as a plus or a minus. I'm kind of indifferent. I like the fact that the bike feels solid when the battery is bolted in. You don't have to shim it or hear it clanking around or like that. I like the way that these pegs feel from where my back is meeting the seat to where the pegs are. So the pegs feel like it's a good distance from my knees, and I don't feel like I'm all crunched up on this bike, like a compact bike. Here we go. Oh yeah, this bike's got wheels, baby. It's climbing up this big ass hill. This is some rocky stuff too. Let's see what we got. Oh, easy. Easy. No problem. No problem. All right, guys, round one of the Kuberg Freerider on the Draggy approved track. Let's see what kind of numbers we can pull from this. And 3, 2, 1, go. All right, guys, round two of the Kuberg Draggy approved track. Make sure we're all set. Good to go. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, guys, so the fastest time we were able to achieve with the 2 runs, Draggy approved track, was 7:45 on the 330-foot mark. That's kind of what I'm shooting for time-wise. I want to be able to get that time lower. But like I said earlier, this is not a straight line bike. This is an off-road trail bike. But for the sake of having a Draggy, and it's a fast bike, I wanted to see how fast it could go. 7:45, 330-foot mark. All right, y'all, if you're watching this and you think this channel didn't suck, consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button, do the social media thing, holla at your boy. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps the channel tremendously.